You're listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. Each week, your host, Polly Requa, interviews veterinarians and individuals in the pet industry from across the nation answering pet questions. Bark and Wag podcast is produced weekly for your enjoyment, and show notes can be found at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. That's BARKNWAG.com. Please remember to subscribe to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk.
Thank you for listening to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk. Bark and Wag is dedicated to protecting our dogs through advocacy, education, and supporting like-minded dog lovers by selling custom pet products. Bark and Wag is excited to announce our new partnership with a Colorado hemp farm to produce a line of CBD products for your pets. Bark and Wag has CBD pet tincture available in 300, 750, 1200, and 2400 milligrams. Bark and Wag CBD is pet safe, no THC, it's made in the USA, and is CO2 extracted. Please check out Bark and Wag's website, barkandwag.com. That is BARK, to see our line of CBD and awesome merchandise. We love pooch ideas for podcasts and merchandise, so anytime send an email to Polly at barkandwag.com with your suggestions.
Welcome to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk. I'm your host, Polly Requa. Today we're talking to Maddie Angevine, professional dog trainer with Gentle Pets. Welcome, Maddie.
Hi, Polly. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being on the podcast. So tell us about Gentle Pets and how did you get involved in being a dog trainer? And what I really want to do is find out, there's so many different ways that you can train a dog. How do listeners in their area find the perfect fit?
Yeah, it's a great question, and a lot of people actually really struggle to find good dog trainers. Even as a dog trainer, it's hard to find places that align with your values and the way that you want to train, because you're right, there's so many different ways to do it, and people have different methods and different kind of tips and tricks and all that kind of stuff. There is one particular company. So the weird thing about dog training is it's not federally or really locally regulated. There's nothing that you have to do in order to be a professional dog trainer. But there is an organization called, the acronym is CPDT, something community. Let me look it up real quick.
Okay.
But it's the Certification Council for Professional Dog Trainers or something similar. And they are doing their best without, having to be federally taken care of. Yeah. To kind of start the process of there being a really standard certification process in the United States. So I always recommend when my friends are looking for dog trainers that they look for somebody that has that certification, because it's a really great one. They talk about not only ways that, scientific methods that are actually proven to teach your dogs new things, but they always are doing it in the most humane way possible. And so they're not doing any of the kind of weird, jerky stuff that you see maybe like the Instagram trainers do online. Sure. It's a lot more humane. If you've heard of the fear-free certifications, a lot of vets have fear-free certifications. CPDT is kind of a similar strain. They partner with the fear-free, and they do a lot for making sure that trainers are actually well-trained and know what kind of is scientifically proven to work on minds that we can't really do, research on. It's kind of interesting. So I always recommend that kind of thing, but it also depends on what exactly you want to train your dog to do. We do a lot of what we call canine nose work at my facility. And canine nose work it's based on what drug and bomb detection dogs do, which is really cool. But
that is really cool.
Yeah, a couple years ago, I want to say it's about 20 years ago now, there was a group that got together and basically thought, well, if these German Shepherds that are trained from babies can do it, why can't we train pet dogs to do it and to do it for fun? So instead of bombs and drugs, they're looking for an essential oil on a Q-tip, and they have to let you know when they found it. And it's a really cool way to bond with your dog. It's an incredibly fulfilling thing for your dog to be able to do, because their nose is such a vital part of kind of what their world looks like. And for something like that, you want to look for the NW Nosework Association, something or other. Let me look that one up too. There's a lot of acronyms. Oh, it's the NACSW. That's what it is. NACSW, the National Association of Canine Scent Work. And they do a really amazing job. You can search for certified trainers in your area and they'll help you find something. And the CPDT does that as well. You can always check those websites and they'll tell you who the trainers in the area are that have actually gone and done the work on learning how these things happen, right? It's like a psychology class, but for dogs. It's actually pretty entertaining.
So is it for like scent training? Is that what you should look at? Because I know in our area they have different classes for scent training.
Yeah, so the scent training likely is, if there's something in your area that does scent work, likely those instructors are certified by the NACSW, because that's kind of the foundation of it. That's where it all came from. And they run online courses that you can take to learn how to do it. It's really neat. But they have all that research and they've put the money and the time into basically figuring out the best practices and the quickest ways. Training is so interesting because every dog that you meet is going to be a little bit different. But with some of the things that people have discovered and practiced and, really used trial and error a lot of times to figure out the fastest ways to train a majority of dogs. Every dog is going to be slightly different. You might have to tweak certain things, but there are some really kind of tried and true methods that a vast majority of dogs respond to. And that's what those two kind of, I don't even know if they're corporations, but those two groups are really looking to make sure is that the trainers that are teaching things that they tell people they're teaching are doing it the right way, the safest way, the most proven and positive way.
Yeah, so we have a golden retriever,
Okay.
and his sister is a champion and does advanced open obedience and superior nose work competitions.
Oh yeah, very cool.
And whenever the woman the breed that from posts about how great Vale is, I always post a picture of Winston in bed with one of the girls, like
living his best life.
Yes, here's the slacker, but congratulations, Vale.
Yeah. No, but that's such the fun thing about having dogs is they only need to learn the things that you want them to learn, right? Like I don't care if my dog knows how to find the birch odor in my backyard, but do I want them to maybe not jump on people when they come through the door because they weigh 100 pounds? Yes. So it's really kind of cool. Like I always laugh. There's all these, kind of clickbait things online that are, the 7 things you should train your dog or 3 things to never do with your dog. And it's just so objective. It's just not the way that it works, right? Everybody has a different idea for what a perfect life with their dog looks like. And that's the things that'll help you have that life are the things that you need to work on.
Right. Because I'm very competitive, because Vale's winning all these awards and she's not doing agility, we'll do agility.
Oh,
so sure. We did multiple classes for agility, and Winston was horrible. The beginning of the class would be, just on it for that treat. And then he get to probably, because they do, you're in the ring for 2 minutes and then they give him a break. And it's 2 minutes. And so there were probably like 3 or 4 dogs that were doing it. So then he wouldn't, go up the ramp or he went through the tube or jump through the circle out. Me putting the treat like right in front of his nose to walk through through the circle or, the ring. And so then I thought, oh my God, he's really bored, so we're not going to do this anymore. So
yeah, and some dogs, I'm surprised that you had that with a golden retriever because they do tend to be so food motivated. And so it tends to be easy to teach them stuff, but they also are just such goofy lovers that they, especially depending on the age, just tend to want to go off and kind of check everything else out. But it definitely, I have one dog. The first dog that I ever got, I still have her. She's 7, almost 8 now. And she is wonderful. She's everything that I want her to be. She doesn't really jump on people unless she's really excited. She follows nicely with me if she doesn't have a leash on. Her recall is fantastic because we do a lot of off-leash stuff. But she would hate doing agility. And so I never even considered doing something like that with her because she's just more, we call her cat-like. She wants to just kind of lounge and be part of the group. My newer dog is 2.5. We've had her for about 1.5 years now, and she wants to do everything. She is such a busybody. Her mind is constantly going. If she doesn't get enough exercise, she hasn't gotten to that point, but I could see her being destructive. And so she's the kind of dog that I can do everything with, right? I'm going to try to put her in some agility because those are the classes that I'm teaching now. It's kind of hard for me to put her through and also teach. But we're working up to doing some agility with her. She's been taking nose work classes and she's eager and enthusiastic about all of it. Well, my older dog just never had that kind of temperament. And that's the other thing that I feel like people always, they get dogs and you have this idea in your head of, we're going to go out back and we're going to throw the ball and you're going to be so great and we can go to the park and do all these things. And some they get their dog and it just isn't what the dog wants to do. And that's such a learning curve to figure out what they actually enjoy and want to spend their time doing. But it's so rewarding when you find that thing that's like their bread and butter, even if it's just laying on the back of the couch and people watching, right?
Right. Well, I'm so competitive. So we were in this class for, a really long, couple months. And Winston was the only one not asked to go to the next stage.
Oh, poor Winston.
I know. So I was in the car and I was talking to him and I'm like, Winston, come on. Like, how hard was it to just jump through the ring and just do it once, Yeah. Like I was talking to my children. Can you let people know the different types of training methods? Some use prong collars, some use treats, some, what way are people trending now? What do you see?
Yeah, that's a great question because it really is something that is so, I would say, I probably am skewed because my entire Instagram Explore page is dog related, but it is something that people talk about more and more now because there are so many different kinds. And with social media, you see the way everybody else is training rather than just knowing what's local to you. I will say I personally am what they call a crossover trainer. And that is somebody who started with, I would say, more tools. So when it comes to, collars and that kind of thing, I've worked with prong collars and pinch collars and e-collars and, whatever else, the gentle leaders, the harnesses. We really worked a lot with tools when I first started. And the more that I read and the more that I took the journey myself to getting all my certifications, the more that I've realized, I think that the method that I personally am so excited about, and more people tend to be trending this way nowadays anyway, is positive reinforcement. What's interesting about that is, did you ever take a Psychology 1 class?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so do you remember Pavlov?
Yes.
Okay, a slightly less remembered name is B.F. Skinner. Do you remember him?
Yeah.
So he did a lot of work with what we call operant conditioning. And operant conditioning has 4 quadrants to it. There's a positive and a negative, and that's kind of on one axis. And then there's a reward and a punisher, and that's on your other axis. So you can have a positive reward, a negative reward, a positive punishment, and a negative punishment. And that seems kind of confusing, but what that means is positive essentially means you're adding something to the environment, and negative means you're removing something. And then the reward means you're increasing the likelihood that that behavior might happen more often. And something that's a punisher means you're decreasing the likelihood of that behavior reoccurring. It's easier with a visual.
Yeah.
But what science has basically been telling us for years, and finally on social media, things are actually getting out about the studies and the research and all of that kind of thing, is that positive reinforcement effectively teaches faster and longer. You just have to have the patience to start. And sometimes people see very immediate results with things like prong collars and e-collars and that kind of thing, because they stop the dog in its tracks, right? They get an immediate kind of response of, oh, wow, that, something touched me. I have to, whoa, what was that? Versus something like, treat-based reward system, you might have to work up to a long-distance recall, but once you have it, it tends to be a healthier way to communicate with your dog and also a longer lasting one. I gave my boyfriend the other day, I had to give the analogy. This is one of my favorites, actually. We live in a really punitive society, right? So you're speeding and you get a ticket. Does anybody actually slow down their driving after they get their first ticket? Probably not. They just learn to look for cops, right? Look back over their shoulder and make sure there's nobody there. But if you had the risk, and instead of risk, I mean like potential, of if you were driving the speed limit and somebody pulled you over or like Venmo'd you $100 because they saw that you were driving the speed limit, you'd probably be more likely to just consistently drive the speed limit, right? So the goal is rewarding the good choices in the effort that they consistently remain
Versus
waiting for them to do something silly and letting them know that's not what you want.
Yeah.
You tend to have a dog that just chooses the thing that you want them to do, rather than a dog that's like sneaking around hoping that they're going to get something, but they know that you don't want them to do that, right? It feels very sneaky, but dogs don't have that emotion of like sneaky hidey, I'm going to be suspicious. Dogs are just opportunistic and they do what's going to benefit them the most. And if doing the right thing is what's going to benefit them the most, they routinely choose to do the right thing far more than just try to do it without you watching.
Yeah, right.
They're smart animals, Mare. They're way smarter than we are.
Yeah. So real fast before we go, have you looked at, since doing scent work, working with hospitals, your dogs to detect cancer?
I personally have not. I have read some things about that and people who do that, and it looks incredibly interesting. I personally, at some point, none of the dogs that I have currently would be interested, most likely, in doing this. But my dream, maybe on my next dog, is to be able to do some search and rescue. And be able to kind of volunteer my time, because it's so fun for me to train it, but it's more fulfilling to actually be able to help somebody doing that. So to have a dog that's trained for a search and rescue type scent work and be able to go and kind of volunteer our time doing something like that that's always been at the top of my list for something to start working on. But agility is so much more fun.
I know. Yes. And I just envisioned Winston and I driving, to the middle of South Dakota to go to, an agility national champion.
Oh yeah, they're crazy.
Of course, that's not going to happen.
He's not interested. He'd rather be on the couch.
Yeah, and he's sleeping right now under my desk with the heater on.
Clearly a spoiled dog, but a happy one. That's the goal, right?
Yes. Well, thanks for being on the podcast, and we look forward to having you back.
Yeah, it was super fun. It was nice talking to you, Polly.
Thank you for listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, www.barkandwag.com, to your friends and other pet owners. Have a pressing question for a veterinarian? Ask your question at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. This has been a KFR production. Join us next time for another edition of Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk.